Hi, hey, and all those other greetings, Fight Adventurers. I'm Jake Spins, welcoming you guys back to my gaming and unboxing channel, where today we're going to be unboxing the last plush for the Sonic movie franchise Build-A-Bear line. And today's character is going to be the one who knocks, the one who does not chuckle, because it is Knuckles. So, as always, let's portal him in. Well, looks like Knuckles decided to drill dose his way into the video. So, here we go. Knuckles played by Idris Elba. Or as the internet's just been saying, Idris Elba. The guy who said Knuckles' voice wouldn't be attractive. And lied. So for the first part of this, we ended up going through Sonic's redesign and the story beats of the first Sonic movie. For the second part of this, we ended up going through Tails' involvement inside of Sonic 2, as well as going through more so of the beginning of this. For this one, we're going to be going over Knuckles' side of this, as well as a few references that were in the movie and I just think are really cool and wanted to point out because I am Sonic nerd and I want you guys to know all of the different things that I spotted. And I have watched this a second time, but I was so enamored that I did miss a few things. As stated in the previous episode, Knuckles' story starts when Dr. Eggman sends out a signal from one of Sonic's quills on the Mushroom Planet, aka Mushroom Hill, or at least what I assumed had been Mushroom Hill. What I had originally thought was going to happen is that he would be teleported there and he would eventually find Knuckles and he would essentially come back with the Master Emerald with Knuckles and that kind of thing, and it would be more so derived inside of Sonic's world. However, what this ended up being was Eggman taking Knuckles to Earth and his door after giving Sonic a little bit of a spook. Knuckles ending up punching Sonic through a wall, the TV, and then very muscularly going, "Do I look like I need your power?" That's probably a terrible impression, but it's on the internet now. You're welcome for embarrassing yourself, Spins. After that, Knuckles and Sonic fight. You find out that Knuckles is looking for the ultimate power, being the Master Emerald, and in this universe, it is said to be a fairy tale, a bedtime story that passed down from generation to generation. Well, in this version of the story, the Echidna clan and the Owl clan, which was the clan that raised Sonic, had been fighting for years. The Echidna clan ended up creating the Chaos Emeralds as a ultimate weapon of destruction that could turn into the Master Emerald. You could suck up the Master Emerald, become almighty powerful with the power of green. And lightning, because Sonic movie is like obsessed with lightning, which is fine, it's just very obsessed with that being power. So the Master Emerald was so strong that one warrior could end up obtaining it and then just completely demolish an entire army. The Owl Clan said, "Hey, that's a bad idea. We don't like that considering we're also like, opposed to you. So we're just going to take that and we're going to hide that so that literally nobody can use it." The Echidnas ended up finding Longclaw and the rest of the owls later on, and they essentially just completely killed each other, except for Sonic and Knuckles. So Knuckles is like, "Wow, you suck, Sonic. You literally took away my entire family, and you're the only one left who I have to just get rid of so that I can find the Master Emerald and avenge all of my people." And that's essentially Knuckles' backstory. It's actually pretty in-depth and pretty good, considering that the game's story is pretty much just Knuckles and his tribe have been guarding the Master Emerald for years. And the tribe stuff comes from the Sonic Adventure games. But essentially, after Chaos ended up wiping them out, it was just Knuckles guarding the Master Emerald, and well, whenever Eggman would come into play and take it, or try to take it, Knuckles would kind of tag along until he realized, hey, you're trying to take the thing I'm guarding, and yeah, no. I don't like that. No, go. And then he would fight and join up with Sonic and Tails. Essentially, the same story beats kind of happened inside of the movie. It just took a lot longer because there were scenes where Knuckles would go through. He trusted Eggman, but mostly because he didn't really have anybody else to trust. Eggman was kind of the first hand to reach out to him and say, hey, I have an offer for you, and offer friendship in quotes, because, well, spoilers, as Knuckles would end up seeing later, Eggman was only interested in Knuckles to be able to get him back home, and also to get the ultimate power that's the Master Emerald. As we all know, the Master Emerald is very real and very, very powerful. Now, the interesting thing is that in this universe, what we find out is that the Master Emerald is an accumulation of all the Chaos Emeralds combined. In a way, it's almost like a Power Rangers thing, where it all pieces together and then makes one big powerful thing, instead of being 7 remotes to a gigantic controller. Now, that being said, the Master Emerald has also been used as a power source in and of itself to power up characters like Metal Sonic, Knuckles, and I believe Sonic, and now Eggman, to where it can just give a ton of power, similar to how the Chaos Emeralds act. In the comics, it actually turned an evil version of Sonic green, and that character was named Scourge. Alright, so I would love to talk more about the movie, but I don't want to go too heavy into spoiler territory. The movie is still new, and it only recently went on to streaming services, so if somebody is seeing these videos to see if they'd be interested in the movie, I don't want to necessarily spoil a whole ton of stuff. But I would like to talk about some interesting and cool references, as well as something that happened after Sonic Movie 2 released. So, few cool references. So the movie actually starts off with, of course, the Mushroom Hill scene, as well as a little bit of a beat from Lost World, where a gigantic boulder comes after Sonic. It's not flaming, but I'd like to think that this is a Sonic Adventure reference for the stage Lost World. There was actually a surprisingly large amount of adventure references. My guess is a lot of people on the movie just really liked adventure or just really grew up with it. Adventure is a very iconic part of Sonic. However, Sonic starts off by having a bunch of Sonic Adventure references, including the very first part of Sonic's story where he first goes to fight Chaos, where he starts on the rooftop, he ends up seeing a bunch of police cars going by, and then he just kind of runs down the building. You also have the exploding water mains. In the movie, this is from Sonic throwing a bomb into the sewers, but in Sonic Adventure's intro, as well as the ending, it's actually Chaos coming up from the sewers, blasting all the manhole covers, and just completely destroying the city. So the fact that they had that was super freaking cool. This also kind of confirms in a weird way that Seattle might be Station Square. Very interesting thing to note, but it does show the similarities. And just calling it Seattle kind of works a little bit better than Station Square, even though I do personally like the name Station Square, but I'm also very biased. Like I said, that was not even close to the only adventure reference. Even in the beginning of the movie, Sonic uses a skateboard, and that skateboard is actually 2 different Easter eggs in one. There's art from the era of adventure, as well as, like, from what I know, I've seen it in Mega Collection, where Sonic is on the skateboard with the design on the bottom of it. The other place this is in the Sonic Adventure snowboard level ice cap, to where you jump on a snowboard with that exact same design, and then you snowboard trying to avoid an avalanche. So in a way, it ends up working as 2 references, and that being said, despite that level actually being a reference to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where Ice Cap originally comes from, it's really cool that they actually also put an avalanche scene in there, which they almost kind of combined a little bit with Speed Highway, having all of the enemies going after. They also really pieced it together in a nice way to where it made sense that there was an avalanche. It wasn't just, boom, there's an avalanche just to be cool. It was, they were fighting on the avalanche, and you actually got a really sweet battle of Sonic and Knuckles just duking it out there, which was just freaking amazing. One reference that wasn't a Sonic Adventure reference is the Dr. Eggman's Mean Bean Machine, which was actually the coffee shop that Agent Stone ran while waiting for Eggman to return to Earth. Okay, so that's all the different references off the top of my head. I'm sure I missed a ton of references, and let me know down below what are your favorite references from the Sonic movie 2, because I am genuinely curious. And now let's get into actually looking at Idris Elba. The new porcupine on the block with the buff chest. So, starting off, as I've been starting off all of these, just like in the movie, Knuckles for this has a ton of quills. Unfortunately, we don't actually have a Knuckles Build-A-Bear that isn't movie, so this is actually the first Knuckles Build-A-Bear that we have. But it is really nice to see a consistency with the quill and the fur texture being the exact same fabric that is extremely soft. Honestly, if I was not a collector, I would definitely use one of these to have as, like, you know, a mental breakdown plush. So if I ever had a situation where I got overloaded, I could just have one of these plush and I could just snuggle it. Because it's so soft, and it's like very fluffy. It's the perfect type of plush for that type of thing. Alright, so design-wise, so I will say, what I do find interesting is that Tails actually had the gumdrop button nose, but Knuckles doesn't. Maybe because Tails is cheerier, but this seems like a very strange thing, as the nose definitely would have fit. Maybe they thought it looked weird on this plush, so instead they decided to go with a felt nose for a very hard felt. So, very strange choice. Another interesting choice is that they actually left Knuckles smiling. And in the movie, he's actually led to be more of an antagonist. Sure, he's misled, just like Knuckles always is, but he does actually scowl a lot, and I feel like it actually would have felt really good if they had him scowl. There is a later character that's going to be in Sonic Movie 3, I won't say who to avoid spoilers, but I feel like if they do merchandise with that character, and trust me, they definitely will, which it makes me very excited, but I feel like that character they definitely need to have scowling, because he just doesn't feel as natural when he's not, unless he's being menacing. But Knuckles, he can be cheerful, and he does still look angry. He looks happily angry. So, that being said though, his muzzle is pretty much the right tan. Could be a little bit darker, though it doesn't really make that big of a difference, and just like the others, it is more of a hard fabric, but it is a smaller muzzle on him, or at least less stiff because of the way his head is. Going from there, we also have the eyes, which have the soft whites, and they're actually very hard to see, but like the other plush, the pupils are embroidered in there, and you have his very angry and raised eyebrows. So angry they look like they just have a thunderstorm just connected to them, or some bad A thing like that, I don't know. Going on from there, we do also have his spines. Now, this is always an interesting thing to see how they do, just because these front ones on plush are a lot better. For figures and stuff, they try to make it to where the arms can move, but it's very restricting. On plush, as big of an issue with this, because, well, it's fabric, so it's more flexible. But for the front spines, it's actually very long, pretty much going a little bit longer than usual, more so to his chest, and then if you go backwards, it looks a bit shorter than I would have expected, but it actually looks really good, and I just really like it. The middle one, I'd say maybe should be a little bit longer, maybe the head should be tilted down a bit more, but again, as I've been saying, it is a Build-A-Bear, so the fact that they got all of the spines stuffed like this and really airtight is really good. He's also bigger in bulk in the Sonic movie, but it's an interesting thing because Sonic Boom Knuckles gives him way too much muscle to a frustrating and comedic tone. Regular Knuckles is actually a very slender type of figure, though he is very strong. In the movie, they got kind of a middle ground with this, and they did a really nice proportion, giving him a nice buffer upper body, but not toning down the rest of him. So it looked very natural, and he looked like you would expect a more buffed out Knuckles to be. Now, there has been some complaints about movie Knuckles having some big knuckles. I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's just my opinion, and that's their opinion, so it's not that big a deal. But if we're going by how I usually do this, if we look on the torso, one of Knuckles' defining characters is always this, like, weird crescent thing. When I was younger, I always thought of this as, like, a fingernail clipping, but now that I'm older, I kind of think of it more as, like, a crescent. This is pretty much how it's always shown on a Knuckles plush, or just Knuckles in general, where it's not really ingrained in the fur. It's more so just a little bit of a slice right there, very clean. In the movie, it's more so fluff, just because, well, that's just the design and how they're going with it, which is pretty fine. You have the embroidery at the sides of it as well, and it is a fairly regular soft type of fabric. Now, like I said about the build, this plush is actually stuffed really well, and they got the tone of Knuckles being more muscular in the movie. They did fantastic giving Sonic more of a medium build, Tails a smaller build, and like I just said, Knuckles a bigger build. You can even see it branching downwards towards the sides as you go downwards, because the chest is definitely bigger. You do have a rounder stomach, but that's going to happen with fluff. But it does still actually curve all the way down, and he has the buffer arms and the buffer legs, which looks really good. Another thing, too, is that you have the tail. It's not as zigzagged as Knuckles' tail usually is, but it actually looks really good, and I actually kind of prefer this version of the tail rather than the zigzag thing. It's not a bad design, it just, this looks a little bit better is all. And that's, again, just my opinion. So, as I mentioned the Knuckles before, these are actually surprisingly very soft, though I think that it's more so like that just because it's larger and they want to make it, you know, more cuddly. Honestly, if I would have guessed what the material would have been without looking at this and without being Build-A-Bear, it probably would have been a harder fabric or more of a vinyl fabric to give sort of a more powerful fist type of form. And honestly, they could have used more of this material like they do on the shoe, but I do like the feeling of this fabric, so even though it would have made more sense, I do kind of like this better. As always, you do have the two knuckles on his fists. Those could probably be a little bit more spread out. Honestly, I'm not sure exactly why they did it like this, but it's not a big issue. It's just kind of a nitpick where it's more of a V instead of down, straight line, up. And then, of course, you have his fist being closed so he can be like, Pwah! Now I know how I'm going to end the video. And then, of course, on the bottom you have his little kicks, which, as I mentioned before, they have that vinyl setting, and they're actually pretty much like the regular Knuckles shoes in general. It's interesting to see that for both Tails and Knuckles, they didn't change the shoes at all, though, to be honest, Tails' shoes are the most practical out of all the Sonic characters. I think Sonic's are the least just because, like, the buckle and all that, so I do actually like his new shoe design. I have always liked the soap shoe design as well. And Knuckles, the only thing I found weird was always the little Lego piece on the top part, but it not being up, it actually looks better in my opinion. And then, of course, you do have the yellow and the red there with the gray shoes, and interestingly enough, unlike Tails, we have a Build-A-Bear logo on this side and a Sonic 2 logo on this side. So I should probably address the elephant in the room. This version of Knuckles might actually be my favorite version. If you couldn't tell already, Boom Knuckles is pretty much my least favorite version of Knuckles. I never liked his tone and that they made him stupid and muscular. It just doesn't feel right for the character. Of course, you have the classic and modern Knuckles, which, you know, they're pretty good. I mean, they're Knuckles. They're not bad, and they're, you know, they're the original versions, so of course I'm going to like them for that reason. But I do like that they struck a good middle ground with a lot of things for Knuckles. They struck it in his design, they struck it in his voice. I mean, heck, they had him have an accent to make it more fitting with his backstory, which is really cool, and the voice actually works really well with Knuckles. And then his personality, it makes sense that he's so gullible because of the situation that he's in, but not only the gullibility of it, but also just his naivety. Something that you don't see often as of recently is Knuckles being naive. It's more so just perceived as Knuckles being stern or stubborn, stupid. But he's not any of those things. He's very gullible, yes, but he's also just very naive. He doesn't really think past note one. He hears something and he goes for it. But in the movie, it makes sense for certain things. Why would Knuckles not be very tech savvy? He came from the Echidna tribe, which use a bunch of spears, a bunch of arrows as their weapons. If they're not tech savvy. Sonic has been living on Earth for years, so it makes sense for him to be tech savvy because, well, he sees the tech all around him. Tails is a genius, and he just builds that kind of tech. It's not necessarily the human kind of tech, but it can translate fairly easily to him going to a police car and hot rodding it. For Knuckles, there's no reason why he should be able to understand, per se, a text thread or emojis. He shouldn't be able to understand how holograms work. Now, granted, you could argue that maybe he's a little bit too naive, and to an extent, I can understand where you'd come from with a criticism like that. Because there is the thing of, just because he's naive doesn't mean he has to be 100% naive, and he doesn't necessarily have to take everything literal, and his speech patterns don't have to be very literal and very choppy, but I think that kind of adds to his charm. He's big and strong, but he's a goof. He's not stupid. He's just a naive goof. And honestly, I really like that. I think that's when Knuckles is always the best, when he's very strong, when he's very independent, but he's also misled, not as an idiot, but just because he's naive. Anyway, though, that's a little bit of a tangent, a little bit of a rant, but that's going to be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button. Let me know down below what you think of all these Build-A-Bear plush and what you thought of the Sonic movie 2. Honestly, it was one of my favorite movies, and even after watching it a second time, I definitely really, really enjoyed it. It's my favorite out of 1 and 2 for the movies, and it's definitely in my top 5 or top 10 favorite movies of all time. Yes, I'm biased, but if you haven't seen it, you haven't given it a chance yet, and you're already this point at the video, chances are you should probably watch it, because it's actually a really good movie. Anyway, though, I'm going to get off my soapbox, and I'm going to see you later. Keep your toe safe, and Knuckles out! It's actually a pretty decent pose, though this is also very intimidating. Ooh, the good Knuckles thumbnail, and he's all red so people click on it. Who's the real evil one now, Eggman? Haha. People to click on my videos, and hopefully they'll enjoy them. Okay, that's it. Bye!